Good morning, everyone. It is June 22nd. This is the Kops office hours. We have a couple of things on the agenda, but if you would like to add anything, please do so. There is one informational piece first up, which is that I cut Kops 1.10.0 Alpha 1 last night, which starts the 1.10 release train. So hopefully we can get that to, I don't know, beta, maybe even a release within a week or two. We'll see. But also I want to start the 1.11 alpha release train, which will be a longer alpha I want to start that as soon as possible after after Kubernetes 1.11 is released, to sort of get on the schedule where we have an alpha release as soon as possible, or concurrently with the Kubernetes release. And so, yes, please do try that out. One interesting thing is there is a Windows build. It took me a long time to actually get my Windows machine updated, but I updated it last night, and I was able to create a cluster from Windows. I didn't do a whole lot more testing than that, and to be clear, the support is only for running the Kops CLI tool on a Windows machine. We cross-build. I'm not sure all the tests passed, but we're certainly getting closer. That was a community contribution. I can't remember who did it, but thank you to that person. And if you do try it out and you have any issues, let me know. I wasn't sure whether, for example, it should have an exe suffix, or anyway, please do file issues on that if you try it out. But yeah, exciting stuff for our Windows friends. So we have Windows, Linux, and Mac now. So I think I'm sure now someone will create a new OS. That's got to be the way. Next on the agenda is Fred. You have a question regarding Kops 1.9.2 and the Heptio Authenticator add-on.
Yes, I'm more than happy to go at the end to get those questions answered, so you guys can get the dev business out of the way.
I think it's great. Go for it. I think.
Okay, we were in the process of figuring out how to get that installed on the masters when I happened to be browsing the master branch in Kops and noticed that there was partial support for it. And it looks like you guys are on track to make it an argument that you can pass to the create command. And that solves several issues that we were looking at in trying to get all of the configuration installed and on the masters and so on. So my question is, which version of Kops would actually have this as a supported item, and could we use an alpha or beta build that has the complete support in it?
Yes. So we won't typically backport features. So we wouldn't typically, if it missed the 1.9 cutoff, it wouldn't typically go back into 1.9.2, for example. The Kops 1.10 does support, the general principle is Kops 1.10 will support like Kubernetes 1.9, Kubernetes 1.8, and basically it's all the way back. We do get a little fuzzy about, like, certainly I don't think too many people are testing Kubernetes 1.5 anymore. So like I wouldn't recommend that, but you should be able to use Kops 1.10 to run Kubernetes 1.9. And as such, the Kops 1.10 alpha should be reasonably stable for running Kubernetes 1.9. So that would be an easy way to do it. I'm not sure whether I'd recommend doing that in production with an alpha build, but certainly to get it up and going for a staging environment, I think would be fine, for example, if you're running the 1.9 version of Kubernetes.
Okay, that is awesome, because that was my other question was, when was the 1.10 alpha going to be available? Because I checked and there were no branches the last time I checked, but your first announcement covered that. Okay, thank you.
I wanted to make sure I had remedied that prior to the meeting today. We had a bunch of PRs this week, and we had a nasty bug or an issue with GCE with the image update where I had some things that needed fixing, so it pushed us by a couple of days, but I made it last night at around 10 p.m. And so there is a 1.10 alpha 0, there is a 1.10 branch. The release branch is still, like 1.9 is still the stable branch, but the alpha release is up and the branch is cut, and we'll be doing a lot of like bulk pulling from the master branch, but in theory we can also start looking at things that we don't even intend to land in 110. So the train is built. So go on.
Okay, thank you very much. That covered all my questions this time. I'll hold the rest to next time.
Awesome. Thanks. Andrew, were you saying something? No? Okay. Sorry. I thought someone said something, but all right. That's great.
So yeah, I was just gonna say thanks for making the 110 release today. I know it's hard doing those things, and you have a very short amount of time. So good job.
Thank you. It's actually not. It's not too bad, and the process is getting smoother. And I'm going to try. We want to get it where we can build these things automatically, and so you may have seen that like a fix went in to make the version numbering a little easier, so we only have to update it in one place. And I'm going to try to build one of the, I think etcd manager probably. I'm going to try to build completely automatically. The Kops build is not terribly compatible with that right now, but we can start somewhere else and get fully automated builds. And I'm imagining a world where we sign a commit, I guess is what we want to do, and that triggers a build. Or we sign a tag maybe, and that triggers a build. I don't know, something like that. That's sort of what I'm playing with, is like the idea. Great. And then there are two things that I guess are longer term that are on the agenda, which one came up on Slack and one came up on a PR in GitHub, which I wanted to sort of bring up with the group, but they are longer term items. So I don't know if anyone else has anything more pressing that they want to bring up. The two items are a cool idea around mirroring Docker images and a cool way to bootstrap kubelet to do kubelet bootstrap tokens that may be more secure than the default implementation. But if anyone else has anything more pressing, then we should talk about that first. Otherwise, I can jump in and ask for your opinions on the two items. All right, let's go for it. So the first one that came up is a gentleman named Sam on Slack. Had a really interesting idea. He was trying to use, so he wants a Docker registry mirror in pull-through mode, primarily for availability in the case of the Docker registry being unavailable or networking type failures maybe. Speed being an advantage, but not really a strict motivator. Sort of a bonus, I guess you'd say. It's different from what we have today with our image mirroring, which is really meant for creating a air-gapped mirror such that you never refer to the source repos at all. But it likely can use a lot of the same approach, where we simply so the Docker actually has a mirror registry flag, I think. The gotcha is it only works for images that are on Docker Hub and does not work for images that are on GCR.io. Yes, I see the shaking of heads. So the problem being that, of course, the API server image is on GCR.io, and I'm trying to think. Anyway, our images do not only come from Docker Hub. And so the suggestion was to effectively rewrite a handful, or the GCR.io images, effectively to the fully qualified mirror. So I think we can use the same asset remapping logic, except it would rewrite it in a way that was more compatible with a pull-through mirror. So I don't know if anyone has anything that they're doing that is similar to that, or incompatible with that, or wants to throw in any opinions. But I thought that sounded like a really great idea and wanted to share it with everyone, see if anyone had any input. But I think Sam actually volunteered to write up a PR for that. I don't know if he's here. I don't see him here. But otherwise, I think that would be great. I also think it'd be great to have, one configuration would be that every node runs a local Docker mirror, and that could then, pull those images in a peer-to-peer way. I think would be exciting, for example. I think there was a project, I can't remember, it was on Hacker News, that like did peer-to-peer distribution of Docker images and that sort of thing. So I figure that I think that's an interesting approach, and I'm hoping he'll come through on that. The other PR, if no one has any thoughts on that, the other PR is more complicated. So kubelet bootstrap tokens, and I may get this wrong, so please correct me, are a way to, we're trying to get it so that every node has a kubelet key pair, and in particular the certificate, that is scoped or identifies that node. And then the idea is that the permissions that the kubelet is granted, which are normally very broad, are narrowed by the node authorizer, so that the kubelet is only allowed to do things that the kubelet should be doing. So for example, the kubelet wouldn't be able to read a secret unless a pod that accessed that secret was scheduled onto that node. The idea being that should you escape out of a container onto the node, that you don't immediately have access to everything in Kubernetes. You just you limit the blast radius so that you only have access to the secrets that were scheduled on that node, for example. So it's a security measure at its core. The way that this works is there's this bootstrap flow for creating the kubelet certificate. And if I recall correctly, the way it works in, say, kubeadm is there is a static token, a master token. Kubelet exchanges the master token, logs in with the master bootstrap token, creates a certificate signing request, and that certificate signing request is signed by kube controller manager, and the kubelet that certificate is the node scoped kubelet certificate. The challenge is that the bootstrap token is a static token again, and I think can mint any kubelet certificate in the system, so is a bit of a flaw in the system. One workaround is to rotate that bootstrap token fairly aggressively, but that isn't very compatible with clouds, where you might have an instance that launches 3 weeks or 3 months after you first created your cluster. Auto-scaling type scenarios or instance replacement type scenarios. So Gamble99 has proposed a PR which adds a new component to the master, which does a pluggable authorization exchange to create a master bootstrap token, a dynamic bootstrap token, effectively what it is. And so the idea is that there's a component that lives on the server, and it's able to create dynamic bootstrap or bootstrap tokens on demand. And there's a client that runs on the node. And so instead of giving a static token to the client comes up and talks to the master and asks it for a bootstrap token. And then there are pluggable authorizers that make sure that the bootstrap token, that the node is allowed to access the bootstrap token. So we can check on AWS that we can use the node instance, the instance identity document, which is a signed piece of metadata that AWS gives you. There's something similar on GCE. I don't believe, certainly Bare Metal doesn't have this, and other clouds we don't have it. The other thing you can do or as far as I know, don't have it. The other thing you can do on AWS, and I think on all clouds, is you can look at the IP address that is making the request, and you can cross-check the IP address against the cloud API. So on AWS, you would do describe instances. You could check the tags on the instance. You can check the Kubernetes cluster tag in particular to make sure it's an instance is part of your cluster. You can check that the IP address corresponds to a machine that's running, isn't just a phantom IP address. So that's vulnerable to IP spoofing, but most clouds seem to lock that down a fair amount. So it's pretty difficult to IP spoof on most clouds. But I think there's also a TLS exchange. So between those pieces of between those checks, I think you build up a pretty robust set of verifications that you can really be reasonably sure that the node is who you think it is. And the PR here is number 5317. I will paste in a link for that, but it's a big one, and
I put it in the agenda.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting one. So if people have thoughts on that, please. One more thing I want to add. Sorry to monologue. If and when we adopt the machines API, the cluster API, it's possible that the Bootstrap certificate would actually be generated on the machine controller instead and pushed to the nodes. But in that scenario, we have a similar problem where we want to be sure that the node we're talking to is who we think it is. And so that's where I think we likely still want some form of exchange to verify that the node, some sort of pluggable exchange to verify that the node is who we think it is, i.e. matches the IP address and all these sort of things. So I'm proposing that we put it in as a feature flagged feature so that we have the ability to iterate on it and turn it off in future if it proves to be an error. But if people have input or are doing this in other ways or are that sort of thing, please speak up or comment on the PR, of course, because it's a complicated thing to ingest. But I don't think that, like Andrew, DO doesn't have an instance identity document, right? A sort of signed document, yeah. And the AWS one is the shortcoming of the AWS one is that it's a static document, and so once you give it to someone, then that person could replay, could pass your identity document to someone else and effectively act as you if they were evil. So you certainly have to be careful passing that around. So like HashiCorp has a Vault implementation. HashiCorp's Vault authenticator works by making it single use in this case. So they keep track of which identity documents they've seen, and if they've seen it, then once it's been used, then that's it. I don't know how people feel about that, and I feel that we can probably still have a mode which works with a static Bootstrap token, which would be the equivalent of the kubeadm behavior. I'm not sure that certain Gamble's one certain approach certainly feels conceptually more secure, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like sort of the bootstrapping problems are also a problem with out-of-tree providers, because if you don't know what the IPs are, you can't create any bootstrap tokens or certificates because you don't know what IPs or host names to use. So yeah, I'm kind of interested in this problem space as well. So keep me updated.
Yeah, I mean, definitely have a look at the PR. I think it is a pretty big PR, but it's broken into commits, and I think if I recall correctly, the third commit is where most of the client and server logic takes place. So that is relatively, it's the third commit, which is more reviewable.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks.
Justin, I see that's in the 110 milestone. Are you still thinking that for 110?
If it's feature flagged, I think yes. I think it doesn't. I don't think it really matters, to be honest. I don't think it matters to anyone that will be trying it. But
fair enough. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, then I think it'd be great to get it in and start to think about it, because I worry that the node authorization thing is an important thing to implement. I think we've held off on it because the previous implementation has been it's unclear of the value on AWS or in a cloud environment. From a security viewpoint, and I think Gamble's PR is addressing that, but it is a big PR that adds a lot of complexity that is, in this case, specific to Kops. And we don't really want this to be in Kops, so I see this as us incubating this functionality, and I've asked the Google security folk, what their opinion of it is, and it is a big PR, so we need to make sure that we're comfortable with it. And I think there's lots of ways to do that, but I figure we can get it in as a feature flag and iterate to make it more understandable and think about alternatives and how it should work. The big advantage of Gamble's approach is that it's very pluggable, so it will work on not just on GCE, but will work on AWS and GCE and DigitalOcean and vSphere and anything. It will work anywhere because you can always turn off authentication and just rely on the TLS handshake, which is effectively a more secure shared token. So that is, even in the worst case, assuming the implementation is correct, then it is better than the token is longer than the current shared token. So
awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone else has anything added to the agenda, or
so I figure since we're on the call, we can talk real quickly about the PR that you opened, Justin, about the launch config cleanup. For anyone that is AWS, I pestered Justin, was like, hey, can we can you point me to the right spot to do this? And then we did a live coding exercise where he walked through and solved the problem of launch config cleanup. Because up until now, I think the only time we were cleaning up was if you ripped down your whole cluster. I think we cleaned up at that point. But now we clean up all but 3 of the most previous launch configs per instance group. And Rodrigo reviewed the PR, but I thought it was just worth bringing up if anyone had an opinion. We could open a new PR. If anyone thinks we need more than 3, that's kind of what Justin and I decided when we were working through it. That really, Kops doesn't use an old config again. So we don't really use it to roll back. If you want to roll back, you actually create a new launch config and roll forwards again, So if anyone has any concerns on that, feel free to mention it. But it's merged into this, and I'm super excited to have that clean up my launch configs. So thank you, Justin.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mike, because it was great. We actually did a video. It's sitting in the queue. I have to figure out YouTube permissions, and then I think about a year's worth of videos will be uploaded, including that one. So we have an hour and a half of fun coding, I think it was total. But yes, the PR itself addresses the issue where eventually you hit a limit on launch configurations and you're not able to launch, or you're not able to Kops update, or Kops update will fail because it can't create a new launch configuration. The current behavior is to delete any ones older than, or to keep only a certain number and delete older ones. That is a behavioral change. And yes, the reason we chose to do that was because you're otherwise going to hit the limit, but it is a behavioral change. And I'll review your suggestion, Rodrigo. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
No, the only suggestion I had was around the environmental variables. I feel those are a little esoteric, and whenever you don't set one, and I know we have a lot in various other places, and so I've built things around Kops itself to set those for me every time, but I know I've forgotten to set them, and various things that aren't supposed to happen, so that's why I'm averse to them.
Definitely the intention is that the majority of users would not really need to set the environment.
Yeah.
And so, because it is too easy to forget. And so I think we chose to change the behavior because we thought that the new behavior was more user-friendly and that people really wouldn't be setting the environment variable to keep their old ones. I don't know if anyone has a use case for keeping their old ones. That would help us inform, is 3 the right number? We just basically chose 3 random.
No, I completely agree. I think my adversity to the environmental variables is more general than for this specific PR. So
yeah, it's I think point taken. I think that the the idea of the environment variable is, suppose we find there is someone that has a use case for going back 30 like launch configurations. We don't have to cut a new Kops release. We can say like, sorry, here's an environment variable you can do, and then we can like deal with it in a timely manner. So that's sort of why it's like an escape hatch. It's like in case of emergency, you have this like very bad UX type thing.
Got it.
Yeah.
I totally just thought it was worth saying like, hey, anyone panic over this, in this setting? But it seems like no one's really too stressed. So that's great.
And I think it is a release note, and I think it's going to be like one of our top release notes for, hey, watch out for this gotcha.
Got it.
Which hopefully will be a net benefit, but awesome. Yeah, thanks for calling attention to that, Mike. And then
I have one more thing.
Yeah, Rodrigo, CA rotation.
Yeah, so I was reading the docs for that because I started getting asked about that. And it looks like currently it's a disruptive process for a cluster.
It is.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I don't really understand the mechanisms that go into RCA creation and rotation currently, so I'm going to dig into that a little more. Justin, since you're a little more familiar with the code, do you know if we can just add a secondary CA and do a rotation of the cluster and then remove the old CA, or is that something that's not currently possible?
We have a procedure for rotating the CA. It is disruptive. There are two cases in which you want to rotate the CA that I know of. There's the case that we think it may have leaked, or we want to revoke a key that used it, and the only way to do that is to revoke the CA entirely. And in that case, you probably do want to do a disruptive procedure, because you actually don't want a period where both keys are valid, because a sophisticated enough attacker could create a new in the window. There is currently the other scenario is we mint a 10-year CA, so it's valid for 10 years, but eventually in 20-something, 2025, I'm guessing, or 2026, the first set of those will start to expire. And so we'll have to rotate those CA keys just naturally. And a good policy would be to rotate them annually, like if we had a nice procedure. It is supposed to be supported. There was a bug in 1.5. It should still be supported. So Kops has all the infrastructure to do it. There's I think it's called certificate and certificate pools. So that's why you can have multiple, you can certainly have multiple certificates in Kops that are all the CA key, that are all the CA ID. They have different versions. There was a bug that should be fixed now. So you should be able to change it to populate all the certificates. There is another gotcha, which is the Kubernetes controller manager has a certificate signing key pair, and that can only be the latest, or that can only be one. It should be the latest. So I don't know if we currently make that distinction in the code, but yes, my belief is you can change most of them to do a pool, and then change the kube controller manager to just do the latest, and it should work. Okay. And the nice thing here is you can always push up a PR, work in progress PR, and E2E should tell you whether it's working or not.
Okay, yeah, I'll start taking a look closer into that. My case falls into the secondary one where regular rotations are required. So
yeah. It's a good idea. I think we had the bug a while ago where it just didn't work, and then there was the KCM gotcha, and so yeah, hopefully it's an easy procedure. The other challenge is when you go to actually remove a CA key, or CA, when you go to remove a CA cert, I guess, you have to regenerate the service accounts. Because the service accounts, I think, are signed. I'm not sure whether they're signed by, well, I'm not sure exactly how the certificate matching works. Obviously, if you were to create a new key, I guess you'd be creating a new key, right? Not just signing a new cert.
Yeah.
So certainly if you're creating a new key, you would have to regenerate the service accounts so that they are signed by, or so that they are signed by the new certificate so that you're then able to delete the old certificate. And we don't have that currently. So that might have to be a sort of operator or controller that runs and occasionally like regenerates service accounts.
Okay.
There's also there's one more, which is if a pod is using an old service account, you'll have to bounce the pod before you rotate.
Yeah.
So there is yeah. It's not easy, but yes, you can certainly do the beginning bit, which is
okay.
Yeah, you could certainly do the new cert in there.
Well, and at least I had to do this once because the original docs, I think around Kubernetes 1.1 or 1.2, set your CA to be 1 year, and I just copied and pasted, and a year later it was like, well, all right, let's do this from scratch again. I think depending on how your service accounts are set up, you can just delete them and they get regenerated automatically. But obviously you can create your own as well, so then you got to rerun all your scripts to rebuild, and yeah, but the automatic ones for namespaces should be auto recreated.
What I don't know if the pods will mount the new one or not.
They won't. You have to bounce the pods.
Okay, so yeah. Create a new cluster is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's what I did. I was like, you know what? It is time to start from scratch again.
It's not insurmountable, but certainly creating a new cluster is not going to be much less effort.
It's a good exercise, at least for me. You know.
Yeah.
I know
Well, the regeneration of everything in place seems a little sketchy, and it seems like even the pods get disrupted. So, yeah. Okay.
We don't have great tooling for moving between clusters right now, right? Yeah. So it's okay if you're not using any volumes, but if you're using volume or load balancers, we don't have great tooling for that in Kubernetes. That would be great to fix, but that's like a whole other, right?
Yeah, no, the load balancing thing, I fortunately have covered. We're looking into Gimbal, so that should cover that use case.
Nice.
But all the other ones, yeah. Okay, thanks very much, guys.
Awesome. Yeah, if you want to start the ball rolling, then maybe we can get closer. But
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we could always just rolling. If you're rolling update a cluster, you've bounced every pod. So we could have a rolling update of a cluster should not be disruptive. So you don't necessarily have to do it all. We could have a sort of like a toolbox command that combines the steps, and it would take a while, I suspect, but it would work.
Yeah.
So
I'll start looking.
That's how you'll spend your New Year's every year from now on, right?
Yep. I'll start looking into it and see what I can come up with.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
That's the last item on the agenda. I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to add. Otherwise, everyone gets 10 or 20 minutes back.
Sounds good. Thanks, Justin.
Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday.